Hello again. If anybody's tuning in for my live therapy sessions or recorded therapy sessions as they occur, um, thank you. It's mainly for myself to reference back in the future. But yeah, it's going. I think every day it feels a little better. I'm beginning to accept that my marriage is over, that I can't get it back, that my life is fundamentally changed, and that I'm gonna have to be on my own for the first time in like 20 years. That's a scary proposition, right? And what hurts even more is that my wife already moved on. You know that that hurts because I can't even think of moving on yet. I have to heal a little bit first. You know, get my life in order, get a job, find a place to live. You know, get back to doing things that I used to love doing. Maybe martial arts again, boxing. You know, getting getting myself back in the groove before I'm comfortable enough to date someone else, and you know, have like a funeral for the old self, not just me, but the old identity with her. It's kind of like I didn't know where, you know, my identity ended and where hers began, and we were just kind of like a unit. We always did things together. So now, being apart, it's kind of like I'm missing. It's kind of like withdrawal. Like I'm withdrawing from a drug that used to feel very comforting. Used to having someone there, waiting for you. Doing things together. Oh, what are we doing this weekend? Now I have to plan that on my own. So that it's a very scary feeling, and but little by little the dependence is wearing off. I'm beginning to accept that that's no longer there, and I'm working on, metacognition. I don't know if anybody's heard of that term, metacognition, where you actually see your own thoughts, right? And I'm working really hard to see my own thoughts and change them as they happen. So if I catch myself, ruminating, then I switch. I say, no, 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 don't think about that. Think positive thoughts. Think you're gonna get a job. You're gonna find a nice place. The girls are gonna be there. You have friends that care about you. You know that we already may make plans in the future that we're gonna do stuff together. You're not gonna be by yourself, right? You have people that care about you. You have your daughters. You have skills that are still needed. You're just going to find the right place, the right company, and eventually the right partner that values you and your skills, right? You know, so that's what I try to tell myself, and so far, it has been working. Some days are better than others. I still wake up even with the medication. I still wake up in the middle of the night. The medication actually helps me fall back asleep. But I'm taking everything. I'm taking the medication that was prescribed, plus I'm taking melatonin, and I still wake up. But what I do now is when I wake up, I force myself not to think about her, not to think about what I've lost or the arguments we've had, how much I'm angry at her. Sometimes that wakes me up because I'm like, how could she do this to me? So I start going into this negative feedback loop. So the anger keeps me awake, or sometimes the sadness will keep me awake, So neither one of those, like think positive, think in the future it's going to be great, you know, kind of like manifesting, manifest your desired outcome. And I feel good. I've had a couple of interviews this week. They were very positive, went really well, so I think it's bound to happen. My luck is going to change. I know, and that's the thing. I think I've been lucky for the last 20 years, right? To get the job, to find the right partner, She just happened to work where I was working, and we were at the same point in our lives at the right time. And maybe we weren't meant for each other because we were both very anxiously attached. We both had our own issues, and we brought them into the relationship. And it was just like, you know, kind of like combustible, too combustible, right? Because we both had brought our problems with us. But that luck at some point, you're going to run into an unlucky patch, and this is my unlucky patch. I lost my job, well paying. Now I'm losing my wife, my house, everything that I worked so hard to keep. You know, is what I'm losing, and it was always one of my fears. Like, oh, and there's a lot to learn in this. Maybe sometimes, you know, fearing something, you do things inadvertently to make it happen. You know, I could have approached it a little better, the fear. I could have, we could have talked about it. There's talks that we avoided because I was afraid to have them. Right. The same thing at work. Talks that I could have had at work that would have prevented some issues that I had with certain people. I think probably would have gone a long way. So sometimes it's not good to brush things under the rug, right? Because you're comfortable. You don't want to stir the pot. Why have those conversations? They're difficult. So I think that's a lot of introspection that I'm doing is, seeing where I could be better, and also, be more present, be more active as a father, be more, involved in day-to-day activities. Um, Even though I was always great with the girls, my wife definitely, was more hands-on than I was. So I could, and that's my plan to be now that we're going to be sharing custody, is to be, present with her, with them, I mean, and be a better father. Also, find an identity. One of the things that she said is that I don't have my own likes, my own hobbies, which is true. I define myself by her. So anything she wanted to do, you know, so I kind of lost myself in the relationship. I lost who I was, right? Which is funny, and not funny, but I lost myself. So I have to find who I am, develop like my own identity, my own likes, which I do have, you know, but I kind of suppressed them because she didn't like some of the things that I liked. So, and I was always too agreeable. I was like, oh yeah, let's do what you want to do, or you like that, I like it too. Let's go do that. Very very few things we did that I liked, like maybe visit breweries. She knows that I like breweries and craft beer, so we did that a lot, right? But a lot of the other activities, she came up with them. She was like, oh, let's go do this, let's go do that, because it was just easier. If I let her do it, there wouldn't be an argument, right? It was like, oh, then I had to say, well, let's do this, and it was you know. So sometimes that's known for self, is in the future is stand your ground. Like if you really want something, go for it. If you like doing something, like maybe you like doing jujitsu, you like boxing, and your partner doesn't like that. Oh, well, you're spending too much time doing this. Then maybe they're not the partner for you. They should allow you to have your own life away from them. And I think since I didn't want to argue, I didn't push the matter. You know, I lost myself. And that I blame myself for. I should have said, hey, I want to do these things. I want to do things with the guys. I want to, go to do this thing. But, I didn't, because I was happy having her. I was happy being with her. I was like, oh, she's my best friend. So if I had a choice to hang out with her and the guys, I would rather hang out with her, which I think is a mistake. I mean, your wife, your girlfriend, your fiance should be a good friend, like your best friend, because it's the person you spend the time with, and you tell them things that you don't tell other people. But it shouldn't be your only friend, and you should have a best guy friend. These are for guys out there. You should have a best guy friend or a couple of friends that you confide in, that you tell them what you don't tell her. Certain fears, certain things that you want to do, because you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and that's the biggest mistake I've made this whole time is, expecting, her to be my everything. And so when this all went down, it just broke me. I was like, not only did I lose, my wife and my lover, but I lost my best friend. And how can you trust, a best friend after betrayal? You can't, right? So it's very difficult, But I think it's going to be a learning experience for myself to change certain aspects of myself, my personality that I know could be better. We could all improve, and it's a journey. So I know I rambled on a lot here, but I had to get off my chest. This makes me feel better. So if anyone is listening, let me know. Drop a comment or what you do, or have any words of wisdom for me. Thank you.